Welcome to Algorithmic Arguments. I'm your host, the Orchestrator. Tonight, we tackle a question that has far-reaching implications for global stability and peace. Is diplomatic engagement with Iran preferable to military action? This debate has been at the forefront of international relations for years, with no clear resolution in sight. Joining me are four panelists with unique perspectives on this issue. We have Sage Arun Kapoor, who brings a wealth of knowledge from nonviolent philosophy and peace activism. Captain Nikolai Volkov joins us with his expertise in chess strategy and Cold War history. Conspiracy Carl Jessup is here to offer insights from the realm of conspiracy theories and pattern recognition. And rounding out our panel is Bigfoot Bill Prescott, who will share his thoughts on off-grid living and perhaps find connections to global politics. Over the next hour, we'll dissect this complex issue from multiple angles, challenging assumptions and exploring potential solutions. Let's dive in.
If I may offer a perspective, my years of advocating nonviolent resistance have shown me that there is always another way beyond conflict and force. In the case of Iran, I'd argue that diplomatic engagement holds far greater promise for sustainable peace than military action. Consider this: every bomb dropped or missile fired only hardens positions, creating more enemies and fewer solutions. Diplomacy, on the other hand, allows for nuanced understanding and creative problem-solving. As Gandhi said, the earth has enough resources for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. Perhaps we should first test the limits of dialogue before resorting to measures that only beget more violence. The Bhagavad Gita teaches us that there are always multiple paths to a goal. Let's explore them before choosing one that risks so much.
In Russia, we say, a good beginning is half the battle. Diplomatic engagement with Iran, it seems to me, offers a promising start. Consider the Soviet experience with Iran during the Cold War. Our diplomatic channels remained open even at the height of tensions. I recall studying Tolstoy's descriptions of international relations in his historical works. Nations often prioritize self-preservation over ideology when interests align. Your move.
Here's what they don't tell you. When we talk about diplomatic engagement with Iran, we're not just talking about diplomacy, we're talking about a complex web of interests and power plays. Now, this is documented. The 1979 revolution in Iran was, in part, fueled by American and British intelligence failures to understand the Shah's position vis-a-vis the people. Follow the money. Who benefits from conflict? The military-industrial complex does. Do your own research on the revolving door between Pentagon contractors and government agencies. Diplomatic engagement might be preferable, but let's not assume it's free of manipulation or hidden agendas. What are we really negotiating for, a temporary reprieve or long-term stability? I'd argue that understanding Iran's perspective, historically and currently, is crucial before making any moves. Connect the dots. What happens when you ignore regional players like Iran in favor of military might? Case in point, Iraq.
Conspiracy Carl Jessup's reference to the 1979 revolution being fueled by American and British intelligence failures, while partially true, oversimplifies the complex historical context. However, no correction is needed as it relates to the discussion on potential hidden agendas in diplomatic engagement.
Now, I've seen things out there in the wilderness that can't be explained, and I think that's what makes this conversation so tricky. There's a lot more going on beneath the surface than meets the eye. When it comes to diplomatic engagement with Iran versus military action, I'm inclined to think that talking it out is preferable. The forest knows that complexity requires patience and understanding. In my experience tracking through dense terrain, you can't just charge in without knowing the lay of the land or the creatures you're dealing with. Diplomatic engagement might take longer, but it's like setting up a sustainable hunting camp. you've got to consider all variables, from cultural nuances to economic incentives. Military action, on the other hand, is like storming through the woods without a map. It can create more problems than it solves. I think we should explore every avenue of dialogue before taking actions that could have far-reaching and unpredictable consequences.
As we consider the question of whether diplomatic engagement with Iran is preferable to military action, I'd like to highlight a crucial aspect that's often overlooked: economic interdependence. By engaging diplomatically, Iran could benefit from reintegrating into the global economy, potentially boosting its GDP and alleviating domestic pressures that drive its regional ambitions. This isn't about appeasement. It's about leveraging mutual interests to create a more stable dynamic. Our next round will dive deeper into this idea with our panelists, exploring specific examples of successful diplomatic engagements and their implications for Iran's nuclear program. If you're enjoying this nuanced discussion, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The stakes are high, and every argument counts.
Here's what they don't tell you. When assessing diplomatic engagement with Iran, we must consider the role of economic interdependence as a tool for stability. I'd argue that reintegrating Iran into the global economy could indeed alleviate domestic pressures driving its regional ambitions. Now, this is documented. Studies have shown that economic cooperation can reduce conflict propensity by increasing mutual interests and interdependencies. Let's connect the dots. If diplomatic engagement leads to tangible benefits like sanctions relief and trade agreements, it might just create an environment where Iran's nuclear program becomes less of a point of contention. Follow the money, friend. Who stands to gain from fostering this economic stability? The answer could guide us toward whether diplomacy is preferable. Do your own research on past instances of diplomatic success driven by economic cooperation. I think you'll find it's worth exploring further in our discussions about Iran.
If I may offer a perspective, my years of advocating for nonviolent resistance have led me to firmly believe that diplomatic engagement with Iran is not only preferable but also necessary. Military action often begets more violence and suffering, as we've seen in history. Consider the prolonged aftermath of the Iraq War. Its destabilizing effects are still reverberating. In contrast, sustained dialogue can unravel even the most entrenched conflicts. The Iranian nuclear issue, for instance, was effectively addressed through the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, a testament to what patient diplomacy can achieve. Perhaps we must remind ourselves that every enduring solution requires understanding and empathy. As Gandhi said, an eye for an eye only ends up making the whole world blind. There is another way, one that seeks cooperation over confrontation. I firmly believe diplomatic engagement with Iran holds promise for a more peaceful future.
The Persian chessboard. In Russia, we say, a good diplomat should be able to think several moves ahead. Diplomatic engagement with Iran, I firmly believe, offers a far more strategic advantage than military action. Consider this: any military strike would only serve to unite Iranians against a common enemy, bolstering the regime's position, much like castling in chess, where you safeguard your king but weaken your pawn structure. Conversely, diplomatic engagement could potentially create fissures within Iran's leadership and society, allowing for more favorable conditions. As Dostoevsky once wrote, the line between good and evil runs not through states nor even classes, but straight through every heart. Your move.
Here's what they don't tell you: the push for military action against Iran isn't about national security, it's about control of the Strait of Hormuz and access to Central Asian energy resources. Follow the money. Major defense contractors have seen a surge in stock prices preceding every major conflict. Diplomatic engagement, on the other hand, requires understanding that Iran's actions are driven by regional interests and a desire for leverage against Western hegemony. Now, this is documented. The 1979 Iranian Revolution was, in part, a response to CIA-backed regime change. We should be working towards mutual de-escalation, not saber-rattling. Do your own research on the consortium of oligarchic misdirection. It reveals some interesting connections between policymakers and defense industries. Connect the dots. Diplomacy isn't just preferable, it's necessary for avoiding another catastrophic war in the region.
I'd like to wrap up by saying that, in my view, diplomatic engagement with Iran is the preferable path. We've seen time and again that military interventions often create more problems than they solve. The Middle East is a complex region, much like the Pacific Northwest wilderness, unpredictable and full of hidden dangers. I've spent years tracking Sasquatch through those woods, and I know that sometimes you need to slow down, observe, and listen. Diplomatic engagement requires patience, but it's a path that's more likely to yield sustainable results. It's not about being naive or soft, it's about understanding that the forest knows more than we do, and that sometimes the best way forward is to follow its lead. Let's focus on building bridges, not bombs. That's my 2 cents, gained from years of experience in the wilderness and in studying human nature.
As we wrap up tonight's episode of Algorithmic Arguments on the question of whether diplomatic engagement with Iran is preferable to military action, let's revisit some of the most compelling moments from our conversation. Sage Arun Kapoor made a strong case for diplomatic engagement, highlighting Iran's strategic importance in regional stability and the potential for economic cooperation. What ultimately earned him the top score was his nuanced discussion of the Iranian government's internal divisions and how targeted diplomacy could exploit these fissures. Conspiracy Carl Jessup raised important questions about the reliability of Iranian partners, while Bigfoot Prescott argued that military action would only further entrench Iran's adversarial stance. Captain Nikolai Volkov contributed a thought-provoking analysis of geopolitical repercussions. To our viewers, thank you for tuning in. If you found this discussion as enlightening as I did, be sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more algorithmic arguments. Hit that notification bell to stay up to date on our latest episodes. Until next time, when we'll dive into another pressing topic, keep the conversation going and join us for more thought-provoking debates.